Mark Rogers TV going to the Big 12, and two all-conference performers for Oklahoma State on the defensive front are gone from 2015, so there's much personnel flux in the air in Stillwater. We bring in Cade Webb from Cowboys Ride for Free to help us sort things out along the defensive line. Cade, this is your first time on. We appreciate you jumping on board here.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Mark. I'm glad to be here.
You know, before we dive into 2016, Emmanuel Ogbah, for anybody who watches college football, knew about his talent. 16.5 tackles for loss last year, 12.5 sacks. Jimmy Bean, lesser known, maybe lesser impactful, but still a premier player, 10.5 tackles for loss last year, 5.5 sacks. Before we dive into this fall and who we're going to see on the defensive front, just talk about those guys and what they brought to the table.
Well, I think Emmanuel Ogbah's presence in the on the defensive end really can't be overstated. I think that once you see the drop-off in talent this season compared to last, you'll really understand what Ogbah brought to the table. At 6'4", 280, he was an absolute monster. Really nobody could run on him. He was, a lot of NFL draft scouts talked about his motor and how it wasn't always there. But as a person who watched every down of every game, I never really saw that. He was always a maximum effort kind of guy. And I think that the defensive line will miss that. And moving to Jimmy Bean, he was out from, he tore his MCL or ACL, some knee injury that caused him to be out for the remainder of the season after the Texas Tech game. So he only played 5 games last year. So while he was a fifth-year senior and he was very valued on the defensive line, it opened up some opportunities for these new guys.
Cade, we've had some of your colleagues from Cowboys Ride for Free on over the past couple of years, not necessarily happy that the recruiting ranking's not as high as you would like in trying to compete with the upper echelon of the Big 12. And I would have to say, in doing some research to discuss the defensive front, not finding a lot of guys with stars next to their names in preparation for 2016. We'll start inside, and there's a guy that does come back with a track record of productivity in Vincent Taylor. Junior season, 9 tackles for loss last season and 4.5 sacks. If you can kind of go inside and let us know what you've got there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Vincent Taylor, he was, we had heard a lot about him in the 2014 season. He didn't get much playing time, if any, in his freshman season. But we had heard a lot about him. Everybody's telling you this Vincent Taylor kid's going to be really good. He's big. He's 6'5", 280 plus. He's huge, and he's a terror on the inside. He's fast. But he's a terror on the inside, and he brings speed, but he also can clog up the middle with that huge frame of his. So it's important to have experience, and he brings it into the defensive interior for Oklahoma State.
And then elsewhere at that defensive tackle spot, if you can kind of size things up for us and who we expect to see this year.
Sure. Well, it's kind of interesting. The guy that got most of the reps last year, they kind of shared it 3 ways. It was Mordecai Miley, Vincent Taylor, and Darian Daniels, who was a true freshman last year. Darian Daniels, by the way, is going to be a star in this league. He played downs every game last season and really succeeded in the Big 12, and that was important to see. But you'll see him rotate in and out with Mordecai Miley. You'll also see a guy, Billy Lavigne, who you did not see last year. He was lost in the preseason for the entire season to a knee injury, and he's also big. He's 6'5", 290. So, Oklahoma State is recruiting those big guys that can clog up the middle, and they're recruiting the taller, more slim guys that can run on the outside. But Billy Lavigne will be a guy to look at, and I would expect him and Ben Hughes and Mordecai Miley. I think they're pretty set at the defensive tackle. That's their strength on this line.
Cade Webb joining us from Cowboys Ride for Free, helping us sort out the defensive front for the Cowboys this season. As we move to end, a little bit more of a glamour spot. They rack up the sacks, the tackles for loss if they're productive, and they've got 2 huge voids to fill, as we addressed on the top of the segment. So set us up at DN for the Cowboys.
Well, unfortunately, when you have guys like Emmanuel Ogbah and Jimmy Bean who played a lot together, you kind of get spoiled and you don't really think of what it could be like after these guys leave. And you really didn't think of what it would be like if they both left at the same time. Luckily, you've got 2 young guys in Jordan Braleford and Jarrell Owens, who are both redshirt sophomores, that have really kind of shown that they at least have a lot of raw talent. You know, they're still raw. They're not polished. They at redshirt sophomores, you know, they bring experience with the injury with Jimmy Bean last year. He wasn't able to play as much, so Owens and Braleford both kind of played that defensive end spot that Bean left. So that's a good thing when you look at this season, because with Braleford and Owens, yeah, they're redshirt sophomores, but they're both big, they're both fast, they were both highly touted out of high school, and now they've got at least a little bit of playing experience. And Jarrell Owens, actually, he got a sack on Trayvon Boykin last year, which is not a thing that many people were able to do. So the talent is there. We'll just see if it comes to fruition.
Yeah, Cade, you mentioned the productivity of Owens. 11 tackles, not a lot, but 6 of those times he's in the backfield. He had 3 sacks, he had 3 tackles for loss on only 11 tackles. That's quite the ratio. Right. You don't see that very often.
No, you really don't. And that speaks to really the potential. You know, 11 tackles and most of them are in the backfield. That's, you know, is it ideal? I'm not really sure. But, you know, with young guys, you see you can see some potential for growth, and it's absolutely there with these guys.
All right. Coming off 10 wins, but also 3 consecutive losses to close out 2015. The defensive front's going to need to step up in replacing Ogbah and also Bean. Cade Webb from Cowboys Ride for Free joining us to set us up for the Cowboys up front. Thanks so much, Cade.
Thanks a lot, Mark.